Babylon dance, lift your spirit into an ancestral trance. I was the mother and the land, but now I've been reduced and I'm often an object of your angry hands. I survived a little passage with you, marched a picket line beside you, endured for you. Don't you remember? Recognize my wealth, because if God made anything better than a black woman, he kept it for himself.
Peace and welcome to the Message to the Black Fam program. I've been off the air for about a year now, and this is my first show back on War on the Horizon. Glad to be back with everybody today. For those who don't know much about me, because like I said, it's been about a year or so since I've been on, my name is Angela Freeman. I'm also known as Lady Shabazz. I started off as a War on the Horizon fan probably back all the way in 2009, and when they came out with the radio station, I would listen every week, call in every week. And it says that we're having some problems on the internet side, and I'm not sure what's going on with that, so we'll see if we can get that resolved. But in the meantime, so I started off as a War on the Horizon fan for quite some time, and people began to know me. I called, and in the meantime, I was also a writer. So I had a blog going, and Brother Irritated Genie's Queen would look at the blog sometimes and hear me call in to his show and her show at the time, and recommended for me to actually come on and do a radio program. So that's how I got here. After I began my radio program, I began writing books. The first one was God's Gift, How to Be a Good Black Woman to a Strong Black Man, and it grew from there. Now I do children's books and things like that. So about a year ago, I decided to take some time off just to kind of rest and recuperate, which I didn't really get to do too much of. But it was definitely time well spent. I actually began doing more community work as a rape crisis counselor and doing speaking engagements with teens and things like that, trying to get a little bit more involved. So that's what I've been doing over the last year that I've been off air. And that's really all the interesting stuff, I guess. You guys can go to my website, authorangela.freeman.com, if you guys want to know more. But that's just a quick synopsis of how I got here, why the show's been off the air, and what I've been doing in the meantime. So today's program is going to be pretty serious. And the way I do my programs is pretty much trying to keep it on a positive level. There's not a lot of drama. There's not a lot of arguments. Every now and then, if somebody gets out of line, it might be a little snapping, but then we get them off the air and keep it pretty friendly. The atmosphere is kind of like just sitting around in your home speaking to friends. That's the atmosphere I like to keep it, so there will be no disrespect or anything like that tolerated. Also, as with every other show on War on the Horizon, we do not use the N-word. Sometimes people find it a little hard when we're dealing with topics like tonight's show, so I do just want to remind everybody of that. Tonight's show is actually going to be the Aftershocks of Rape. And because I've been working more in the community and also over the last year working on a book to help survivors of child rape, adult rape, any kind of sexual violation, I thought that this show was important to do. I don't think that our community really understands rape. I don't think that we get it. We don't have the information. And unfortunately, I found out that the activist community, as far as rape goes, is pretty terrible. It's ran by mostly devils, mostly lesbians, and feminists. Feminist and lesbian kind of crossing over a lot of times. So these are not the most healthy, most stable people out there to be helping survivors, but these are the people helping survivors. In the meantime, we have these nuts running around. I know you guys probably remember the whole King Noble controversy. We have these nuts running around who actually have positive things to say about rape, not really understanding the effects that it has on survivors, be it male or female. I can't speak as much on the male, even though it's very devastating, but because males generally don't like to speak about it like the females do, I don't have quite as much information. I can relate to it on some levels, but not as much. So, if you're a male survivor and you feel like speaking about it, you're more than welcome to call in tonight. But usually that doesn't happen too often. I just wanted to talk a little bit about rape and what constitutes rape, because I think that we're very confused because we've been raised in this European culture where it's very predatory. When you get back to our original culture, men are expected to be protectors of women and children. And that's not saying that women aren't strong, that women can't protect ourselves, nothing like that. Of course, we come from a long line of queens and warriors, but we should be able to rely on our men to be able to protect us, and that hasn't been happening. One moment. I'm going to try one more time to get the internet connection on because you guys are blowing up my messages and I cannot concentrate. So one moment. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to try to get the internet connection going. 1 second. And then we're going to actually talk about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, because that seems to really be a problem with things that have become normalized but should not be. All right, one moment. All right, we're going to see if we can get the internet working, and if not, then we're just going to keep rolling. 1 second. Okay, there's some kind of tech issue. All right. So, unfortunately, it looks like the internet is not going to work. I'll try that again in a few minutes. But anyway, so for everybody who is calling in, I guess that you guys will get this information, and I will try to YouTube this for the people who cannot hear online. Okay, so inappropriate sexual behavior. You want to stay away from anything that could be considered predatory. And I actually did a program on YouTube. You can go to Angela Freeman, the Angela Freeman channel on YouTube, and see some of the programs I've done on this. But a lot of men have been taught that sex is something you have to pursue, you have to talk a woman into, which is not really correct. The beauty of male-female relationships in the black community, or amongst Africans, I should say, African-centered people, is that a woman sees a man and is committed to a man and will give herself to that man willingly. That is an appropriate sexual relationship, when a woman is willingly giving herself to the man. What has happened, because we've been reared under European society, is we have begun to think like them. Back in the caves, they would just hit somebody in the head, knock them over the head, and drag them, and that would be that. Go rape them in the cave. And we do that sometimes. We do not get consent, or a lot of men do not get consent before they pursue sex with a woman, and that leads to a lot of problems. So the only appropriate sexual behavior would be having verbal consent from the woman. Now, if you've been in a relationship for a very long time, you know each other, you're very comfortable, then, of course, there will be exceptions to this rule. But anytime a woman says no, always assume that a no means no. Now, when you go to these, here, like rape experts talk, they'll always say no always means no. We all know that's not true. Sometimes when you're in a relationship, no doesn't always mean no. But unless you are very committed, been together a very long time, and you know how you guys get down, no always should be assumed to mean no. If a woman says no and it seems like she's playing or she doesn't really mean it, that's fine. But what you should do as a man is back up and let her come to you and let her reestablish those ties. You don't want to do that, because then it gets very, very blurry as to, is this situation really rape or is it not? So that's not only protecting you, it's also protecting the woman when you back up and say, I don't play like that. Do you want to do this or not? And let her make that move towards you. Women a lot of times will have what we call a fight or flight reaction when it comes to rape. And so you always see that. You see if a woman's not running away, or if a woman's not fighting, sometimes people will say, well, it wasn't really rape. What we don't understand is that there's also something called freeze, which is the third thing, which a lot of people don't talk about, the third reaction. So it can be fight, flight, or freeze. And freeze is where you cannot react. It's where you just lay there, kind of like a deer caught in headlights, that kind of reaction. So never think because a woman isn't fighting or isn't kicking and screaming or trying to get away that it's not rape. Again, that's why I said that we need verbal consent. You need to definitely make sure that this woman is consenting, because some women who have been victimized many times will not be able to react. That will be their reaction, is to freeze. And that's why some men will say, well, this woman's easy or that woman's easy. A lot of times they didn't want to have sex with that person. They just didn't know how to get out of the situation. So they laid there. And men, you should know enough to pay attention to a woman to see if she's really into it or not. A lot of times they'll just lay there and the man will sleep with them and they'll feel like they're getting raped all over again. But a lot of people won't count that as rape because there was no fight or flight reaction. It was just freeze. So when you talk about verbal consent, who can give consent and who cannot? A drunk woman cannot give consent. A woman who is under the influence of narcotics is not able to give consent. She's not in her right mind. Obviously, if somebody is asleep or unconscious, they are not able to give consent. Obviously, if she's fighting or resisting, that's obvious she hasn't given consent. She's trying to fight you. A woman who gives in because of threats or because of manipulation, obviously that's not really consent. She's doing that almost under duress. So that also would be inappropriate sexual conduct. Anybody underage or mentally challenged, of course, cannot give informed, or I should say verbal consent. So that's kind of where we're drawing the line here. There are some things that people may say, well, that's not rape. I don't consider that rape. Well, I'm not going to debate that tonight, but I will say that it's inappropriate. And to me, those situations actually are rape. If you don't have consent from a woman, verbal consent, saying yes, and especially in the early stages of a relationship, that can be very, very problematic and lead to a lot of problems. And when this Queen Noble character was doing this video saying how rape was revolutionary because we're taking our women back from the white man, what he doesn't understand is the after effects, the aftershocks of rape, how that affects a woman's psyche, the reaction that you're going to get out of that woman, and how most times that woman is probably not going to be fit to help build a nation because of the damage that's been done to her today. So on that note, I just wanted to give some background information on that because, like I said, a lot of people are completely unfamiliar with rape. A lot of people think that getting a girl drunk to have sex with her or manipulating her or just talking to her until she finally breaks down is enough to be considered consent, and it's not. So I'm going to bring on a guest today who's going to talk to us a little bit about her story with child sexual abuse and rape. And that's another thing. And a lot of parents don't understand this. When you don't protect your child from sexual abuse, you're actually setting them up for rape. most people who are sexually abused as a child end up being a survivor of rape in their adulthood. It's like they continue to get victimized. I don't know anybody that I've actually had a conversation with who has had some kind of child molestation happen to them as a child, where it hasn't also ended up in a rape situation as an adult. Don't know anybody who has been able to break that. I'm sure that there are some stories. So protecting your children is very important because it doesn't just stop. It's almost like you have a target painted on you once you become a victim of child molestation, and rapists tend to pick up on it, and it usually happens again as an adult. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that, and then we're going to actually talk about the after effects of rape, so that when you see these idiots like Queen Noble talking about how rape is revolutionary or whatever, you can actually think back to the show and think about how it affects women and ask, how could that ever be part of African revolution? Okay, so without further ado, Sister Jasmine, are you with me?
Yes, hello.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Now, I just happened to meet Jasmine on Facebook. She's a Facebook friend of mine. And I think that, did I post something about rape, or you saw a video that I did about rape and you contacted me?
Yes, I saw your video. It was titled Why Your Women Hate You. And you had mentioned, it was something along the lines of women being raped and men being kind of dismissive of it, and why oftentimes black women end up becoming feminists because they're kind of just angry that the men are really dismissive of the pain. And you had mentioned at the end of the video how you were trying to find a woman who's maybe experienced something similar but wasn't into the man bashing. I was like, oh, that's me. So that's why I contacted you.
Yes, ma'am. And that's why Facebook, a lot of people say a lot of bad things about Facebook, but I like it because you can meet a lot of people on there, do a lot of networking, and end up doing a lot of good, because there are so many women who are afraid to tell their story. And the more people tell their stories, the more you realize that most black women have a story. And it's not anything to be ashamed of. It's unfortunately very, very commonplace. So I do thank you for being brave enough to come on here. A lot of people, like I said, are a little bit afraid to do that. Can you give us just a little bit of background about yourself, how you first experienced sexual violation, and I guess we can just start there.
Okay. I would say the first few incidents started when I was about 10 or 11. There were a couple of boys who lived in my neighborhood who were, they liked me and I liked them too. And they kind of just were kind of, they would like just touch me inappropriately, like around my house or like around, I used to live right by a church, and, you know, we would like hang around and play in the church, and they would kind of just touch me inappropriately, say things like, oh, we're going to play mommy and daddy, or doctor and nurse and stuff. And that's kind of how it started. I didn't really think much of it. I kind of just thought that, oh, you know, they're just being boys. They like me, so this is okay.
Okay. And so it started out with touching with other children?
Yes.
And that's something that happens a lot. I know I actually did a program on, actually 3 programs on child molestation about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And that was a common theme, is that it was either neighborhood children or family members, and that's usually how it first started. Did it just end with the touching there, or did it progress?
The most they would do after that, they would try to kiss me. And that was pretty much it.
And did you feel violated in that situation, or was it more like a children's play kind of thing?
It was that, and I also kind of felt confused about what was going on.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it proceeded to other situations you were saying? You said you've experienced a few.
Yes. When I was 14, there was a store owner. I would go into like an antique store during the summer, and one time when I was in there, he actually my younger brother was actually in the store with me, and he kind of just wandered off somewhere else into the store, and he also like touched me inappropriately.
Okay, and was this a black man or Arab, white?
I think he was Italian, but
Okay.
he was European of some sort. Yeah.
Okay. And how did you feel when that happened?
I was at that time I knew that what he was doing was wrong, but I felt like I couldn't do anything as it was happening. And I knew also that he knew that what he was doing was wrong, because when my brother kind of came back into sight, he kind of just stopped doing it. And then when he went off and looked around the store again, he did the same thing.
Now, did those instances where it was inappropriate touching have an impact on you, or not as much as some later events?
Not as much as like the later events, especially the beginning ones. I kind of really didn't know exactly what was going on. I kind of just thought, oh, this is kind of like child's play.
Right, and that happens a lot to children. I really want to stress that because I know it's better. I know it's a lot worse now. I can remember around the same age. I was probably 14 years old, and I definitely looked like 13, 14 years old. I was definitely a late bloomer. And I remember being hit on a lot by older men. I remember specifically in my neighborhood, my cousin had a singing group who was very talented. They had a record deal. They were on Showtime at the Apollo, which was big at that time. And one of their members fell off, and they replaced him. And this was like a 25-year-old dude. And he actually tried to start talking to me. He took me to the movies. At that time, my parents were working a lot, so they were not paying attention like they should have been. And he tried to do some inappropriate things that didn't go to like molestation necessarily, but it was definitely very inappropriate. And there were a lot of men who were 25 and older who were preying on those 14-year-old girls like me, and I know that that's still happening today. There's a lot of R. Kellys out there. And I think that while an inappropriate touch, sometimes it can have an effect. Sometimes it can lower your self-esteem. It can make you feel a little cheap or something like that. I guess it just depends on how it's done. It depends on the details of the situation as to if it makes you feel bad, lowers your self-esteem. But what it does almost universally is awaken a sense of sexuality, or for a lot of people, becoming promiscuous, becoming very sexually curious, because they've kind of opened that door, even if it's kissing, touching, rubbing, that is kind of opens the door for other things. So when was the first time that you had an encounter that actually affected you?
I was 16.
Okay, so like 2 years later.
Yes.
Okay. And what happened during that?
I was assaulted by a former coworker.
And this was another like a teenager around your age, or was this an older?
Okay. I was 16 and he was 25.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And was this like at work? I'm trying to, and I only want you to go into whatever details you feel comfortable with, but I'm trying to paint a picture for parents, because unfortunately, it seems like most parents, as they age, they tend to forget what it was like when they were children, and that opens up the door for a lot of things to happen to their children, because it's like they have blinders on. So I'm just trying to paint a picture from them for them. Was this at work? Was this in another location? How did it come about that he had access to you?
Okay. I guess I'll go into like a little brief background. I actually had gotten my first job, and about a week into this job, this guy comes in. I was actually waiting for my mother to come pick me up because I was work, and this guy walks into the and he's filling out an application, and he kind of asked me some questions about the application and me for just a little bit, and I had an interest in him. I found out the next day that he actually got the job, and so we talked for a little bit. Um, and I was feeling kind of brave, so I kind of went up to him and said like, okay, we should talk on the phone, and we talked on the phone basically every day for hours, and I found out that he was 24 at the time, and I told myself, okay, I think I can handle that, and about 3 weeks 3 or 4 weeks after we had met, he actually quit working there he had actually gotten a better job. And we were trying to coordinate uh, meeting outside of work. And so we had finally figured out a way to meet outside of work. And it was just like the moment I got into the car, like something did not feel right. It was because I had always been like entertaining these ideas like, yeah, I'm grown, mature. He's 24, I'm 16. This is great. But I was also kind of hesitant because of the age range, and I was, more so because I didn't want to go behind my parents' back and necessarily do anything that I might regret. So I told him I was willing to, wait into doing other things until I was of age. But yeah, the moment I got into the car, it felt wrong, and he's basically proceeding to touch me and kiss me, and I kind of had flashbacks of what had happened to me when I was 14, and uh, like in my head I was thinking, okay, I really just want him to stop, but I couldn't quite figure out how to say it, and then I finally did figure out how to say it, and we kind of stopped. He stopped, and we kind of just played around a bit outside of the car. And then after that, he just threw me on the hood of his car, and I was wearing like a mini skirt, and he decided he was pulling up my skirt, and he pulled down my underwear, and I don't remember if I told him to stop or anything. I feel like I did, but I really don't remember. Um, and then he basically proceeded to rape me. And then after it happened, I kind of just I sped off home on my bike, and like I just remember like he had this really strong smell, and I took a bath and I scrubbed myself so hard, and my skin was basically peeling off. That's how hard I was scrubbing, and my skin was red, and I couldn't get his scent off of me for like 3 days.
Okay. And I think that this is important because, these people, you meet them anywhere. A lot of times we think it's somebody hiding behind a bush or something like that, but these predators who are preying on our daughters are everywhere. I remember I had to be 14. I was working at a toy store, and I was working at the cash register, and there was a right behind the cash register a desk where you would go and pick up your big ticket items like bikes or something like that. And there was a brother there who every time I worked, he'd come out to the front bringing people their video games or their bicycles or whatever, and he'd always make a comment like, "Ooh, look at how you look in those jeans," or you making me feel a certain way, or something like that. And this was when I was supposed to be safe, working in a toy store. Now I didn't see him outside of that, but it gives me chills to think about because this man had to be in his 40s. This wasn't even a 20-year-old. So we let our children, our daughters, and our sons, because our sons are victimized too nowadays more than ever. go to these environments thinking that we're letting them be independent, but they end up getting preyed on, unfortunately. And I think that that's a very common reaction, is to go home and scrub because you feel dirty after that. You feel tainted. Um, so that's definitely very common. What was after the initial shock wore off? What were your feelings? Did you feel angry, depressed, sad? What was your reaction? How did it change you? Because it always changes your personality in some way. How do you think it changed you? Jasmine, oh, sorry. Thought I
For
had
the
lost
first 3 years, I'm sorry. For the first 3 years, I felt really cold.
you. Mhm.
Like it actually took me about 3 years before I actually realized what had actually happened, because I kept kind of just pushing it off and not trying to think about it, and just um, actually a year after it had happened, because we had still kept in contact, because I was in shock, but I really wanted to believe he was a nice person and that it was kind of like a misunderstanding or something. Um, and About a couple of months after it had happened, he had told me like, "Oh, I'm gonna, marry you. I'm just gonna wait till the right time to do it." And then I kind of was just like, "No, this isn't going to happen." So I just stopped talking to him for about 10 months, and then I felt guilty for cutting him off. And so the next year, I was 17. We got in contact, and he had told me that he was moving out out of state, but he wanted to like connect with me, and I was really fine with that. But he never gotten back in contact with me. I got a new phone number and stuff like that, and really, part it happened 10 years ago, but every now and then, part of me kind of just goes on Google and try to search him and try to find out where he is, so I can, because part of me kind of just wants to, I don't know, just go back and try to, I don't know, just rectify the situation.
Yeah, fix it. Now, you said that he called you back and said that he was moving, but he wanted to have sex with you again?
No,
You were cutting
well,
out a little bit on that part, so I just want to make sure that we heard that.
oh no, he had, after it happened, we still were in contact, but I felt a little bit, uh, I guess, weary of him while we were
Right.
still in contact. It was kind of conflicting thoughts in my head, because I was like, oh, he's a nice person. He didn't really need to do that. And on the other hand, I was like, no, he did that, and he seemed like he doesn't really care about what happened. Um, and when he had told me that he wanted to marry me, like when the time was right, it kind of clicked in my head a little bit that no, this doesn't seem right. But then, like 10 months later, I felt guilty for thinking that way. I was like, oh, I should have kept in contact with him. And then when I finally did get back in contact with him, he told me he was moving. He was moving to I don't know, pursue something else.
Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure because we're having a storm here in my area, so it's going in and out a little bit, and I just wanted to make sure that we got that correct. Now, one thing, and I think that I know the answer just from hearing you tell the story. Do you really deep inside, I know we can intellectualize it and say I know, but do you really, really feel and understand that it was not your fault?
Yes.
So not just on an intellectual level, but you don't have any guilt about that situation at all. You really know and feel that it's not your fault.
Well, I will say that it took me a really long time to
Mhm.
get to a point where I was able to say it's not my fault. But there's like a little part that says, well, you shouldn't have been there, and things
Right.
like that. But now it's kind of like when I do think like that, my mind kind of just goes like, well, he shouldn't have done that, or
Good.
he should have, and then I'm actually at that age now where I was his age, and I'm really disgusted at, and then what also makes it worse for me was that he had like a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm kind of just like, I'm his age now, and if I had a child, I would just be so disgusted.
Okay. And that's something else that I think is very important, because a lot of times we think, rape victims, rape survivors, we can be very, very hard on them, and we don't realize that a lot of times people who have been raped or molested are their own worst critics. They already feel bad. They already spend a lot of time blaming themselves, and it really takes a lot of work to get to the point where you don't blame yourself anymore, because like you said, a lot of times it'll be you intellectually, it's not your fault, but sometimes there's still a little part of you that says, well, what if you didn't do this? Well, you shouldn't have done that. There's still sometimes that little voice that does blame you, and it takes some work to silence that voice, and that really does a lot to a woman, her psyche, and again, that's where a lot of times you may get into low self-esteem and different behaviors, because you feel like even though this man was dead wrong, it was your fault. Or, I mean, I'm assuming even for boys, whether it was a man or a woman that does it, you still feel some kind of guilt that you should have done something. And sometimes it's very, very irrational. I know my first encounter was, I think I was 4 or 5 years old. And for a long time, I thought, well, you shouldn't have went to his room, or you should have told somebody, or you should have did this, or you should have done that. And it took a long time to get to the point where you have to actually think back about, you may even look at a picture of yourself at that age and say, really? Really, you're going to blame somebody? You're going to blame a 4-year-old for something that this much older person did? And it takes a lot to kind of bring that reality there where you actually can feel free from blame. How, after this experience, how did you relate to men and boys? Did you have relationships after this, or did you kind of shy away from relationships?
It was a really nasty cycle of being really clingy and then really distant, and then just keep doing that over and over and over again. Just kind of, it was kind of like a little bit of power trip, kind of just bringing, like, when I was having relationships or on the verge of having relationships, kind of just bringing them in and thinking I'm this really interesting, wonderful person, and then kind of just shutting them off. Like, it kind of just gave me like a sense of I don't know, like, maybe not power is not the right word, but something along the lines, like, it was like, okay, I'm hurting them a little bit, and I feel a little bit better about myself for that happening. And I don't know, I also developed a bit of a savior complex. Like, I kept trying to find people who looked like him, who kind of acted like him, and I would kind of try to just recreate the scenario so that the quote-unquote right thing happened, so I could kind of just erase what had happened, and I can kind of just start over. And of course it never worked, but
right.
I did that for about 8 years.
Wow. And that's something that happens commonly. Like I said, we can be so hard when people come out and say that they're a survivor. A lot of people say, oh, she just want to ruin a brother's life. And they don't really understand that when this happens, usually a lot of people end up either wanting to protect the perpetrator, or, like you said, trying to make it right in their own mind. A lot of times you don't really want to believe that this happened to them. You're still wanting to believe the best in them. Depending on what your relationship is, you may love them in some way or really care for them in some way, even though they've done this horrible thing to you. So it's a very confusing thing, and I think that a lot of people just don't really get it. After the situation, were there any others as you continued to grow, or was that the last inappropriate situation you encountered?
No, there was a couple of others. I think when I was 21. I think I was 21, and he wasn't a best friend, but he was like a close friend, I guess. And we were just at his apartment, and he was I don't know, we were I think we're about to go out, and he was like, "Oh, I want to have sex or something." I'm like, "No, not really." And he kind of talked himself into talked me into doing it, even though I really didn't want to do it. And then after it happened, he kind of just casually said something along the lines of, "So how did you feel about me raping you?" or something like that. And I kind of was just, it was just, really off-putting. But that wasn't he actually, it happened again like the next year. He had a little bit to drink, and we went back to my place, and it happened again. And then I basically didn't. I think we saw each other again a couple of times after that. I never brought it up about what had happened, but I was, in the back of my mind, I was thinking about it. And then I found out he had gotten a girlfriend, and then I found out later that he was having a child, and that really pissed me off.
So he actually admitted that he raped you. He actually was totally aware that that's what happened.
Right, and he said it in such a joking, casual, nonchalant way, too. And I think I told him that it had happened to me when I was 16, which made it, kind of just made it a little bit worse.
Now, in the situation, and I do want you to know that the only reason I'm even asking this is just so that people on the show listening can get a better understanding of a rape situation. As I was saying earlier, usually there's either a fight, a flight, or a freeze response. What was your response? Were you kicking and screaming? Were you frozen? What happened? What was your response?
I think the first time it was a freeze response, and the second time I know I said no, and then I kind of was just like, okay, this isn't working, so I'm just gonna let it, I guess, happen. And also something else in regards to like the first time it happened that also affected the other times was that the guy, he had told me that, I think he told me he was in the military of some sort, and he had also gone to prison or something. So I was really afraid that, and also because he's a man and I'm a child, that if I put up some type of fight or something, he might actually do something worse to me. And so my mindset was kind of like, okay, well, if I just lay here and just let it happen, maybe he won't, hurt me or possibly kill me.
Right. And do you think that after being assaulted that first time that it kind of took away your voice a little bit, where you, after that, really didn't know how to fight or how to resist at that point? It's almost like you're just paralyzed. Was that your feeling, or I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Because, and I really want to stress that, because that's something that a lot of people don't understand. I've heard brothers just laugh and say, well, this girl is easy, she just let me have it. And my thought to that is, a lot of times, like I said, not understanding that after being victimized, a lot of times for a lot of people, that voice where you would normally put up a resistance is not functioning. So you cannot do that. So a lot of times when you just see a woman standing, laying there, who is not fighting you having sex, but is obviously not interested, that is your cue as a man to stop and see what's up with it. I don't know why somebody would want to have sex with somebody who's obviously not enjoying it or not into it anyway. And that's a very selfish thing to do, but that's definitely your cue. When you know better, do not continue with that, because that could very well be a situation where you are inflicting more harm on this woman. She's obviously not into it, and she may just not have the words to be able to say no at that point.
Mhm.
Okay. So you said that there were some other situations as well. Do you want to speak on those a little bit, just so that we can continue to see how this happens, how this unfolds?
Okay. There was a period in a couple of years ago where I was having some really bad housing situations, and I kind of just ended up having to crash at various people's houses that they weren't friends, but I knew them a little bit. And it was kind of there was this one particular person who basically he would just force me to do things with him like every night. And one night I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And so then he proceeded to call the cops on me and claim that I stole his stuff. And then I was basically just crashing around various people's places. And so this other guy, he said, you can stay with me. And one time he had a friend over, and he was telling me that I was interested in his friend because of the body language I guess I was giving off. And then he was telling him like how selfish I was. And then he kind of just he laid me down on the couch, and he was just touching me. And I it wasn't really a freeze response, because I was in my head, I was kind of thinking like, okay, if I resist, then I'm going to get kicked out again. I'm not going to necessarily have a place to stay. It was February, so it was really cold. I didn't really have a place to stay. So then he proceeded to rape me, basically. And then, like, his friend after that, proceeded to rape me. So it was like twice in one day, basically. And the other guy after that, which was it was confusing. It kind of got compounded because I actually kind of did have an interest in him, and I kind of hated the fact that that's kind of what our interaction was. And we had talked about it like months later, and I kind of told him like it was a really bad situation, and I really didn't want it to go down like that. And he was actually the only person who was he was really sympathetic about it, and he was really sorry about, because he didn't know like the whole situation of what was going on. And then that was the last time.
So, and a lot of people at home are probably thinking it's unusual that you kind of kept in touch with a lot of people who you feel violated you. Can you explain what that's about? Why in a lot of situations you kind of remained in contact? Because I think a lot of people think that if something like that happens to you, you never want to see that person again.
Mhm. Well, one of the main reasons, it's one of those, for me, it was one of those things where it's like I knew them, and like the first couple of ones I knew them, and we were really close. So I guess like me ending contact was kind of just uh ending contact was not necessarily in the picture at the time. It took me a really long time, for the most part, to just completely. There was about with those situations, two of them I just completely cut off contact with, because I actually wasn't really that close to them, so it was kind of easier for me to just like not speak to them again. But the other ones, it was difficult.
So how do you feel about these people now? I know that there's many different people that you feel violated you. So I know maybe there's different feelings for different ones. But overall, are you angry? Are you disappointed? How do you feel about these people?
Like now, or
Yes, now looking back on it now.
uh, it goes. it's back and forth between kind of indifference and like just like rage.
Okay. So sometimes you kind of, is it like a numb feeling or just like a well feeling when you
It's
say?
it's like a really hot, bubbly kind of feeling.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How does it make you feel towards men in general? Because it seems like you've tried to befriend quite a few men, and it's always ended up in a situation with you being victimized. So, what is your relationship now with men in general?
Well, now I think I have like it's not a completely healthy relationship, but I think I have like a somewhat of a healthy relationship with men. I know, like, at least intellectually, I know like they're not all trying to get me and trying to hurt me. Um Although I do feel a little anxiety when I leave the house and I'm just like out and about and I'm walking and I see like if guys pass me, I feel a little bit I feel myself kind of tensing up, and then it gets worse if they start talking to me. Um, um, yeah.
So, and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that because I mean, that's pretty common. When I go out and I dress pretty modestly, there's usually, I don't get it as much as other women because I dress modestly, but there's usually somebody who may say something, that's inappropriate, some kind of sexual comment. A lot of times because they feel like in today's climate that is a compliment to talk about a woman's body or her appearance or something like that. But they don't realize that to women who have been through something like this, it can be very threatening, and to women who respect themselves, it's not a compliment at all. It's very offensive. But having gone through so many situations, um, do you feel threatened when brothers come at you? Do you feel that, because I don't know, maybe it depends on the part of the country you're in. Do brothers come at you pretty aggressively, and if so, what's your reaction?
Um, well, I live in New York,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
the the bulk of the bulk of the aggressive guys was either in was in Brooklyn and on occasion like in Manhattan. And uh I live in Queens now, and I don't know. It seems like the people in Queens seem to be a little bit more respectful. But basically, it'll start off as a compliment, and then a lot of the times I'm not even paying attention to them because I'm focused on getting where I need to go, or I'm listening to music or something like that. And then, but if not, they'll approach me and maybe say something. I'm like, okay, well, thank you for the compliment or something. And then, they might ask for a phone number. So they're like, oh, I'm not interested. Oh, we'll just be friends. I'm like, well, I'm not really interested in being a friend. I'm trying to be, nice and cordial. And most of the time, they kind of just back off. But then there's a couple of instances where they'll like follow me, or they'll just start hurling insults and stuff like that as I'm walking and stuff like that. I'm kind of just, I really don't want to say anything because I really don't want to escalate I really don't want to escalate the situation.
But how does it make you feel? I know a lot of times that's the reaction is to stay quiet. Even in situations like sexual situations, is just be quiet and just wait for it to be over with. But how does that make you feel inside?
Um, it's kind of it's terrifying. It's because when someone does approach me, and it might really genuinely just be a compliment, because for the most part, the people who compliment me, they're not like saying anything necessarily lewd or something. They're just saying like, oh, you're pretty or beautiful or gorgeous or something like that. I'm like, well, thank you. But then in my head, I'm thinking, okay, they might want something more, and I'm going to say no, and then I'm just hoping that they're not going to, just, I don't know, just try to straight out attack me or something because I do say no.
Now, and I'm going to ask you something because it'll probably lead to something else. I asked you the race of the very first guy, well, the first adult who was touching you inappropriately. You said he was Italian. Now, the rest of these men, were they black? Were they Hispanic? What were their race?
They were all black.
Okay. And so I'm thinking, I mean, because this wasn't just once or twice, this has been so many occasions. And like you said, even though you may have had the freeze mechanism where you may not have been screaming, no, 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 but they still knew that it was rape. They actually said out of their own mouth, some of them, that it was rape. It seems like that would be kind of a constant fear when you're around men, is that the consequence is going to be rape, because you said you were close to these men. You actually stayed in contact with some of them. So how fearful are you? Is that like something that's constantly on your mind, that these black men could rape you?
It's not as bad as it used to be. Like a couple of years ago, it was so bad that I would try to avoid leaving the house if I absolutely had to. Like, that's how bad it was. But now when I leave the house, it's not really a fear of being raped. It's more of a fear of just maybe being yelled at or escalating into something else.
Okay. Okay. So the one with the two men, that was the last situation?
Mhm.
And I'm a little confused because you said the guy didn't realize that it was not a voluntary situation. He thought that you were going to be cool with two men having sex with you. He thought that was just okay, or you were.
Yeah, I guess it was the way the situation was. It was like I don't even know. It was just a weird situation. I guess he thought it was because I guess he thought because his friend was saying that, oh, she likes you because of your body language or something like that. I guess he thought it was okay.
Okay. But in your mind, as you laid there, you were being raped.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I think what I'm going to do is go to the phone lines, see if anybody has any questions, and then we're going to really get into maybe some current events, because there's been quite a few disturbing things going on recently, and we'll see what we can say about that. But I did just really appreciate this. I didn't hear your story beforehand. I wanted to hear it online so I could be hearing it at the same time everybody else is. And I think it's good because, again, it's showing a different face of what this is like. So many people really just imagine the only traumatic experience being somebody holding you down while you're kicking and screaming and crying. And a lot of times that's not necessarily the case, and that doesn't mean that anybody is less traumatized on the inside. And as I said at the beginning, a lot of times once it happens once, it replays over and over and over again. So let's go on. And did you want to say anything else before we go to the phone line?
No, not right now.
Okay. All right. Now some of these people may just be listening. So we'll go see. Anonymous call, you're live on War on the Horizon. Anonymous call. Okay. Just listening in. 4119. I think this might be my cousin. You're live on War on the Horizon.
Hey, how you doing, cousin? How you doing?
I'm good, cousin Sharif. How you doing?
All right. Real proud of you of what you're doing on such a serious topic. And with the young lady, sorry you had to suffer some of these things. I work with young ladies. I'm a counselor in the schools. So through your experience, I was wondering if there was anything that you could share with me that I could transfer to them on how to, I guess, protect themselves from something like this happening to them? Is there anything they should say? Is there anything, any particular people they should try to be aware of now that you look back on it? Just anything that, to try to prevent these things from happening.
Oh, I'm sorry. I live right by an airport, and a plane just went by. I could barely hear what you said, so could you repeat that, please?
I said that I'm a counselor in the schools, and I work with a lot of young people. Preferably, I work with black boys, but I'm starting to pick up a lot more black females. And I was wondering, through your experience, was there anything that you could tell me that I could tell them on how to prevent, something like this from happening, like not to hang around this type of person, don't go this place, or don't say, anything that could prevent them, from, something like this happening to them. Talking about like teenage girls.
Okay. Well, with teenage girls, but especially with teenage girls, but with the boys as well. Just there's something about teenage girls that like a certain type of older man just becomes like attracted to. Will gas their heads up with all these compliments about, oh, you're beautiful, oh, you're mature, you don't need to hang around these guys your age, they don't, they're dumb and stuff like that, you need like a real older man or something like that. And those sound like really good compliments, but there's like an ulterior motive with that. You have to think in your head, why is this older guy talking to me? And then also think like, would my, if you have like a healthy relationship with your parents, would my parents, basically make sure your parents, know everybody that you're talking to. And I'm pretty sure there's probably other things too. I guess also being aware of your surroundings, and also with people who are closer to your age, kind of just watch out for, I guess, like predatory signs that they might be trying to, lure you into doing things that you're not comfortable with doing.
I always tell girls as well, just to add on, when you're a teenager, that is really not the time to be dating. When you are a teenager, that is the time to be getting yourself together and preparing yourself for a long-term relationship that you'll enter into later, when you're financially stable, when you've seen a bit of the world and things like that. So I really discourage girls from dating. Now, of course, a lot of them are hard-headed. So in that situation, I would say if you're going to date, the old school group dating thing is always a good idea, because when you're alone with a man or a boy, these boys, they grow. And it's very easy to be overpowered by them. It's very easy to be talked into something that you don't want to do. And I would tell them to definitely avoid anybody that's older than 1 or 2 years older than you, because they have no reason whatsoever to be interested in you. And it's really hard to say, because I'll say, like, my first real relationship, I think, started when I was 15, and the brother was 19 years old, which I think is way too old, and he shouldn't have been involved with me. Of course, it was the whole "you're mature" thing. I actually ended up marrying that guy, so that wasn't like a horrific experience, but it's still, I think, inappropriate. And most relationships like that don't end up that way. Usually it ends up with the female being hurt. So I would definitely say avoid anybody more than a couple of years older than you. Keep your head in the books, travel in groups. And even when it comes to self-defense, I tell girls, instead of wearing all these flimsy clothes, because I'm so tired of seeing these girls fighting and acting wild, and they're wearing these little shorts and tank tops, and then next thing you know, their shirt's ripping and all their body is hanging all over everywhere, and they're on World Star. Obviously, that's not very good from a self-defense standpoint. So dress in layers. Wear not just a flimsy shirt. Wear something with buttons that somebody is going to have obstacles to try to get off. Wear pants. If you're going to wear a skirt, wear some body shaping shorts or something like that under it so that it's giving you more time to fight somebody off if you have to, and always be aware. Never think that you're so cool with somebody that they won't do it, because as you heard in her story, she was cool with a lot of those people, and one of the people she was cool with asked her, well, how do you feel about being raped? This is the psychotic nature of people today, so we have to always be on guard. That would be my advice.
Right. I think also our parents plays a big role, because I was talking with a young lady the other day. She's only 12, but she don't look 12, and she, I first started talking with her like, what time do you go to bed? She said, I can stay up late as I want. It's unlimited. And then she was saying, then I asked her what her curfew was. She was like, about 10 o'clock. I said, well, you should already be in the bed, at 10 o'clock. And then she proceeded to go on to say how her mother will let other boys in the neighborhood come to the house and they play these little kissing games and this and that. And I'm just shaking my head like, man, this isn't going to turn out good. And she's, a pretty little girl, but she don't look like she's 12. A lot of these boys will use that. And well, I didn't know that, what their age was, but you can look at someone, even some of their features, and just talk to them, and you can about figure out their age. So that's just an excuse. But if the parents aren't there to guard the children, they're just increasing the chances of something traumatic, like this happening. But I guess that's a whole nother topic.
No, and that's very, very true. And that's why I have such limited advice for children, because they're really not in a position to protect themselves. They think they know everything, but they know little to nothing. It's really up to the parents, and if the parents don't take that responsibility, you can forget about it. I just sent my stepdaughter home today. She lives out of state, and she'll be 18 next month. And her maturity level, to me, is probably that of a 13-year-old girl. She's definitely not ready to go out there in the world. I could give her all the advice in the world, but do I think that she's really going to apply it? Not really. So I reserve most of my advice for adults, and not to give a free plug or anything, but I do have a book called Hands Off. If you go to Amazon and look for Hands Off by Angela Freeman, it's just a really thin pamphlet. It's like $5, but it gives parents information to help protect their children from this, because really it's not up to the children to do. It's really up to us to be parents, and until we're willing to do that, we're going to continue to throw our future away and have our children really stunted, because they have to spend their whole adulthood trying to recover from their childhood, and that's really sad.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm going to let someone else get on, and sis, I hope you continue in your path of recovery, and of course, keep doing the great what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for calling in, cousin.
All right.
All right. Okay. We'll go to a Skype call. You are live on War on the Horizon. Call from Skype. All right. They might just be listening in. Okay, we have another call from Skype. You're live on War on the Horizon.
Peace and love. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Is this my sister Freya?
Yes, it is.
How are you today?
I'm blessed, and I started to take a nap, and I said, oh, my God, the show is on. Let me get online, like, right now, because I'm so happy that you're back on War on the Horizon, and I needed to be on this inaugural call of you coming back. So I'm thankful to be connected to you today, sis.
Thank you. Thanks so much for calling in. Now,
Yes.
I know that you probably deal with this issue quite a bit because you're a doula and you deal a lot with sisterhood and women's issues, and I know this probably comes up quite a bit, I would imagine.
It does. It comes up all the time, and I don't even know where to begin, because we could probably you could probably do a whole series of educational calls like this, because the issue is so complex and there's so many different aspects that we can work in terms of identifying, preventing, healing, defense. It's so vast, but it is something that I see as a woman who deals with the womb, because there's so many of our sisters who have been violated and raped. And when I lived in Atlanta years ago is when I was 21, and that's when I first started kind of doing my own research, when I started looking into it. And then I met one sister who had been raped and was going through her process of healing. And then when I told another sister, oh man, I met this sister and she asked me to go to a support group with her because this happened. She broke down and she told me, and the next one and the next one and the next one. And then when I looked up, every single woman that I was connected to had been violated in some type of way. Every single woman that I knew, that was every black woman.
Right. I don't know too many that aren't. And the ones that I do know that deny it, their actions tell me otherwise.
Right.
So I think that it's very widespread.
Well, I commend the sister your guest that called in, because, I mean, I can relate to the story so much. It just seems like once that first incident happens as a little girl, and you don't have an opportunity to heal from that. You don't have anybody that's listening to you. You don't have anybody that's willing to protect you. You know what I mean? It doesn't give you the tools to prevent it from happening again. So I don't know, like, sister, how did you reconcile the recurring theme in your life of ending up in situations where men exerted their power over you, and you didn't have a choice, or you didn't necessarily choose to engage in sexual relations with them, but it was something that happened to you? I just wanted to get her thoughts on the fact that it happened more than once.
Well, I ended up going to therapy after all of those incidents happened, and because I realized that I really needed some type of foundation and some type of grounding. But I wanted to get a therapist or something who wasn't just going to put me on like medication or something like that, because I had really bad PTSD, and I had already had depression, and the PTSD kind of like exacerbated it. So I ended up finding and I specifically wanted a female therapist, because I had a male therapist before, like years before, and it was an okay experience, but I really wanted a female perspective. So I ended up finding a therapist who dealt with, who she doesn't necessarily believe in using like medication to kind of just numb everything. And so she kind of, we both delved beyond the whole, because I was intellectualizing everything, and I was like, okay, this all makes sense, but it didn't actually stop the cycle. Mm-hmm. So we kind of just went through things, and she kind of just, broke into like you're thinking about it. You're not actually, dealing with it and actually fully feeling all of the stuff that's happening to you. You need to like just, break through that. And you need to go beyond this notion of you're going to find a guy. And because I had this mindset, I was going to find a guy and I was just going to throw all of my baggage on him. And he was going to, take it, and then he was going to save me, and then, happily ever after. And it was like, well, that didn't work. And so, just helping me create my own, like, foundation. So that was kind of like a whole person, so that, when I did actually get into a relationship, I could actually be like a fully functional person and not have someone constantly walking on eggshells, wondering like, is she thinking about certain things? Is she going to blow up at me? Is she, all these type of things.
I can relate to everything that you said, sis. And what's coming to my mind is when I'm seeing um, families that are parenting, especially the single moms that are parenting their children, both boys and girls, I can just look at a situation and see all the vulnerabilities in their parenting style that's leaving their child so open to exploitation and mishandling. Just being real loose with their children in terms of where they are and their long periods of time without being unsupervised. And I don't know, sis, if you can relate to not having a relationship with your mom and dad, like a type of open communication to where your parents even told you what is okay, what's not okay, how should people be handling you, and if this happens, then you need to do this. Did your parents ever talk to you about how to stay safe?
Not really. My stepdad kind of did, but my mom seemed kind of we never really had like an emotional kind of bond. And I was kind of teetering back and forth between being somewhat sheltered and kind of just being able to kind of just roam around and kind of do whatever I wanted to do. So when the first time, like when I was molested when I was 14, I actually didn't want to call the police about and file a report. I actually called a hotline, and she had told me that the counselor told me that he could be doing this to other girls too. So if you file a report, we can So I filed a report. I called after like my parents had left or something, and then they came back and they saw the cops, and I had to retell the story again. And so my stepdad's like in this rage, and he's talking about how he's going to go to the guy, he's going to beat him up and all this stuff. And my mom's like, "Now don't do that." And my mom didn't really seem concerned about what had happened. She kind of just seemed kind of cold about the whole thing. And even like after I filed the report, like nothing really happened. I think the guy went out of business and he moved somewhere else. So when it happened the second time, I kind of just thought about what had happened the first time, and I was kind of just like, well, are the police really going to do anything? Is my mom, going to? And I always had this like feeling that she would have said that it was my fault that it happened to me.
You hit on a very important topic, and Sister Shabazz, I hope that you can expound on that more throughout the show, because it's so many times we're seeing that lack of mommy-daughter relationships that leave our daughters vulnerable to misuse, abuse, not knowing what to do, what just not even having a barometer of knowing what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what's okay, what's not okay. And we don't have the ability, a lot of the young girls, to go to our mothers and say, mommy, so-and-so looked at me this way and I didn't feel good. We don't even have that type of relationship with our parents. Our parents are providing us with a roof, they're providing us with clothing, and they're providing us with food. But that loving, nurturing relationship to where you can go to them for anything is not there. And I see that recurring theme, and I'm just seeing a correlation between why is the rate of rape and molestation and pedophilia that's going on in our community, that's affecting our young people, why is it happening? And then when I looked at it, a lot of times the moms have unresolved pain or trauma in their lives, and then they don't even know how to nurture the parents. So I know they're the daughters. I know there are probably other callers, so I don't want to monopolize all the time.
No, you're not at all. And I think that that's a very good point. I was just thinking back, and I think during my young childhood, I'm thinking back, and it was a point where my parents were splitting up. My father, he was never the most faithful person in the world, but I guess it finally got to the point where my mother was like, okay, choose your family or choose this other woman. He went with the other woman. And I liked the other woman, so I was kind of torn between my mother and the other woman, kind of put a strain on the relationship. So I think that situation was kind of present there. And by the time my mother actually talked to me about molestation, it was too late. I think she may have talked to me at maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 when she began thinking that something may have happened. But as I said earlier in the show, happened when it was like 4 or 5. So she was already too late. By that time, I had already been silent about it, and I was not prepared to break my silence. I mean, the longer you go without telling somebody, the less likely you are to tell somebody. It almost becomes like you're an accomplice in the situation.
Right.
So by that time, it was kind of too late. So I do think that you're onto something there. When there is some kind of distance created between mom and daughter, that does open the doors for a lot of stuff to happen. I think that you're absolutely right.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have anything else for us?
I'm just enjoying listening. You know, the wheels are turning in my head, sis, of just wanting to get in the streets and do the work that we got to do to heal our people.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am. I definitely thank you for the work that you're doing, because you're not one out there that's just talking. You're one that's out there actually doing, and we need more doers. So I definitely appreciate that. All right. Did you have any final comments, or was that?
I just want to thank the sister again for her bravery, for coming out, because just through her sharing her story, there's so many people who are being able to use this as a way to heal. So I just deep gratitude for both of you for sharing your stories.
Yes,
Thank you.
All right. And we're touching on some really good things. I like to sit back and listen sometimes because, I'm definitely not the expert in this. I do help out in the field where I can, but I'm certainly not an expert. And there's a lot of good points being made, and that's actually one thing I meant to bring up earlier when we talk about the recurrence. That's very, very normal, because what happens is when you are violated, for some women, for many women, it's almost like a thing like you were saying where you want to make it better. So sometimes you will find yourself in similar situations time after time after time, and somebody from the outside may say, well, she must want to be raped. She keeps, getting herself in these situations, hasn't she learned? But what they don't understand is the psychology behind it, where you're trying to correct a situation. You're trying to get the outcome that you want. And you said that that's kind of what happened at some points in your life, but that's very, very normal. And even to the point where you said that sometimes you're attracted to people who look like your attacker, just trying to make it right, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Okay, so we're going to go take a couple of more calls, and anybody who wants to call in, I'm sorry, I always forget to give out the call-in number. It is 760-569-7676, participation code 948656, and then hit the pound button. All right, we have an anonymous call. You're live on War on the Horizon.
Hotep, Sister Shabazz, how are you?
Hotep, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm well. Hey, thank you for taking on such a serious topic. If it does affect many of our sisters in the community, and also thank you to your guest for having the courage, to tell her story. Many times when we hear of our sisters being raped, a lot of them express that their rapists has threaten their life or threaten the life of their family or children, in order to, I guess, continue raping without repercussions. I wanted to ask your guest, was that the case for her? And if not, can she, expound on, what her reasons were for, staying in contact, with some of the males that, if it wasn't fear, what was her reason for staying in contact with some of them? I get the, I guess the psychological aspect of continuing on in different relationships, and you may find yourself with the same type of guy, and it happens again, and, it goes on that way. But to stay in contact with the ones who actually, raped you. I guess I'm just having the disconnect, and if she can help me, understand that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Oh, okay. To be honest, I really don't really know or really understand exactly why I kept in contact with him. I guess with the first time it happened, it took me about 3 years to actually realize what had happened to me. And so I was basically trying to push the idea of that actually happening and trying to maintain like a normal type of relationship, because I really wanted to make, it work. And I kind of just thought that, well, all the good qualities and the good things he had done prior kind of just canceled out the rape that happened.
Right.
And with the other people, it was to a lesser extent, but it was basically that same mentality. It was kind of just, there was basically, for the most part, after every time it happened, there was always a disconnect between what had actually happened and what I was basically trying to do.
Right.
But it wasn't until the last time that it happened, I was kind of just, because after it happened, I ended up getting kicked out anyway. A couple of days later, I ended up getting kicked out anyway. So I was like, well, there's really no sense of me staying in contact. I guess at that point, I kind of clicked, like, this is a really bad person, and not just because he kicked me out, but because he forced himself. He said I was being selfish. He basically said that, told his friend to do whatever. I don't know, in my head it was kind of just like, it was worse.
Yeah, it sounds like it's, you can equate. My mother was a battered woman, so I always, would ask her, why'd you stay? And it seems like it's almost the same syndrome as you're hoping it gets better. You stay because you're hoping that, it'll change, or, things will get better. So it sounds like, that was your, thoughts in the beginning as well.
Mm-hmm. And I something else I would want to bring up, like intellectually, like I knew that everything that I was doing wasn't right for the most part, but it was just, it almost became a sense where everything just kind of just seemed automatic. And so I guess that's really something else that other people should know, because like you kind of, and a lot of times you might know on the surface that this isn't right, that these things shouldn't be happening, but it's kind of like you really can't stop it, because you really can't. It takes a really long time to kind of just like heal from everything.
Understood.
And I guess also, I'm sorry, I guess also in my head I was thinking, well, it's easier to try to replay the scenarios and try to make them better than it is to actually go seek help and kind of just face everything that's happened and trying to just tackle everything.
I got you. Well, thank you. Thank you for, sharing your story, and again, having the courage to, even, come and tell the world what happened to you. But I commend you for that. I commend you, and I hope that you are on the mend, and I hope that, things have gotten better for you, and that you are able to reconcile things and move on into a healthy relationship. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. All right. We have another anonymous caller. You're live on More on the Horizon. Anonymous caller?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello?
How are you?
Hi, greetings. This is Sister Nima. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Long time no see or no hear from.
Yeah, I know. I've been kind of on the, just keeping low a little bit. But I want to welcome you back to the airwaves, first of all.
Thank you.
And her story, I'm sitting here and I'm like fighting back major tears. Like, I just feel like I want to break down. Mm-hmm. Your story is so, oh my God, it's tough for me hearing this. It really is. I've never been a victim, but I do know some women who've been down that road. And I guess I'm a little confused as to, you staying close to some of the people who violated you. I understand it's the fright, but why did you decide to still keep those people close? Did you think it was I don't want to say comforting in a way, but I'm just trying to get an understanding as to, do you think you could answer that, or?
It was, I don't know, it always took like a little bit longer from the event, from when it happened to like it clicking in my head, like, oh, this, because like my brain was kind of just going into overdrive, kind of just saying like, oh, that didn't actually happen. Or it would say, well, it kind of did happen, but it was like, it wasn't really that big of a deal. And I would kind of just go into the whole thing about like, well, he didn't put it all the way in, so it doesn't necessarily really count. I didn't actually fight back. I could have said no. If I did say no, then this whole thing wouldn't have happened. It was basically like all these excuses going on in my head, and I was kind of just like, well, if, I don't know, I guess I was just basically putting all the blame on myself. It was basically my fault. He's not at fault. And I'm pretty sure that, if he were at fault, he would know, and he'd be, he'd apologize, and we'd kind of just go on. I just keep in contact or something.
Why do you think that maybe you just kind of, maybe in your mind, felt like in a state of denial, like this is not happening to me? And do you think that probably was it? Or? Okay.
Yes, it was always more than one thing. It was anger, it was depression, it was denial, it was other things that were kind of just always going on, like at the same time. And it would always bother me that all these things kept happening at the same time, and I kept doing these things, but I didn't exactly know exactly why I was doing them.
Wow. Well, I'm really touched by your story, and I just want to thank you for sharing, because it definitely takes a lot to come on the air and share your story. I couldn't, it's like in my mind, I couldn't imagine. But I just want to, just encourage you to continue just being strong and, reaching out for that support. So.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Sister Nima. And I think because that is something that's it's hard to understand, and maybe we should spend a little time on it, because I can just see people on the replay saying, but I don't get it. It seems like from what I'm hearing you saying, from what I know from personal experience, it's almost like, number one, you're in shock that this happened. Number two, you're disappointed that it happened. Number three, you're blaming yourself. You always, anytime that there's violation, you always go to the what ifs, which are so toxic, but it's you can't help it. What if I wouldn't have gone there? What if I wouldn't have done this? What if I would have said no? Why didn't I fight? And a lot of times I think, and this is what I was saying earlier when we say, well, that's just trying to mess up the brother's life. When somebody comes forward with rape, is that we do so much in our mind to protect brothers sometimes, to make up any excuse for brothers sometimes. We love to try to say, like, well, maybe it was miscommunication. You know, I didn't say no, I didn't fight. Well, maybe it was just like a miscommunication and he didn't really understand what he was doing. Were you feeling some of that? Or not really?
With the first one, yes.
Okay.
As far as, like, I guess protecting him in my mind, because it like a couple of years after that, I kind of developed this really weird romantic feelings towards him. And, like, mind you, I haven't been in contact with him in 10 years. And I just started having these really romantic feelings. And I hated those feelings so much. But I couldn't, like, even when I was, I was in a relationship at the time, and I was kind of going through these things with my boyfriend at the time, and I'd also gone through them with my therapist, and they would talk about how this guy is evil and how he's a monster, and I was kind of fighting back, trying to tell them, like, no, he's not a monster, he's actually a really good guy. It's just, he's a good guy, it's just this one, minus this one thing, he's actually a pretty good guy. And I kind of just wanted to, like, I would feel really rage and a lot of anger whenever someone would say something negative about him. Now, the other ones, I didn't really care if anyone said anything negative about them. But, like, the first one, I had this really weird obsession and attachment to him.
Do you think with the other ones, one of the reasons that you stayed around them was because you were kind of blaming yourself and not putting the blame on them, so you really didn't realize the enormity of what they did because you were too busy, you know, looking at yourself, or that's not the case? That's what it kind of sounded like to me, but I could be mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
That was pretty much, it was kind of like the first one kind of just paved the way for the other ones to kind of happen.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the phone line. 2306, you're live on War on the Horizon. 2306.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You were breaking up a little bit, but I think you're coming in clearer now. How are you?
Oh, okay. I'm all right. My name is Shalani. I'm actually a friend of Jasmine's. Met her.
Shalani.
Hey. Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, since you told me about the show, I didn't want to miss it. Wow. Just in, like, as far as, like, listening to your experience, because I remember that we did talk about some of your experiences, but I was not aware of the detail of you actually being in regular contact with these people that had done this. Because that just definitely complicates things. Is because, like, oh, well, yeah, how do you separate your original friendship with this person, and then they do something like this, and then you're still around them? Yeah, I just couldn't imagine it, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, I mean, I have other friends that have been in situations similar where people have stabbed them in the back, and they were still trying to maintain some sort of friendship with them, and the pattern would recur where they stayed in a vulnerable situation, and these people would repeatedly do things to injure them or hurt them. And, although in this particular friend of mine, this is a male. So it's similar, but not the same as the experience that you went into detail about tonight. One thing...
Still there? Hello?
Hello.
Okay, I can hear you. It seems like maybe you know. Okay, there he is. Yeah, you're breaking up, brother. Can you see if I can?
Okay.
Okay, what were you saying?
All right, I'll see what I can do. Now, sometimes people will try to, I guess, seek a friend out as an unofficial therapist, but the problem is that a lot of us, we don't have the training or the experience to really understand how to provide that kind of support to someone. I mean, and in some cases, I mean, I've had girlfriends that actually recommended that they get professional help because for them to properly get kind of treatment for what they had been through, I knew that I was not able to do that. I get that, okay, I'm going to, bring more harm to the situation, trying to help and not knowing what to do, while this individual is going through whatever emotions going through as a result of what's happened to them.
Right.
I mean, if that makes any sense.
Definitely. Go ahead.
Oh, it absolutely does, because a lot of people would say, oh, you don't actually need to go to a therapist. You just need to find someone to talk to. And so I would talk to friends, and even though the friends are like really well-intentioned and they really do mean well, they would end up saying certain things that would end up being more damaging. Like, well, why are you why are you still, it's really weird that you're still in contact, or, X amount of time has happened. Why aren't you, get over it, and things like that. So seeking like a trained professional it's a nice safe place where, they're trained not to judge you and to, help you create these situations. And actually, finally told my mother a couple of years ago. I'd written her a letter because I really wanted to have like a I guess like a real mother-daughter relationship. And I basically told her how this basically kind of just affected my life. It was that incident and the lack of a emotional connection with my mother, and she kind of just she kind of said I was being dramatic about the whole thing, and said that therapy is worse. She said basically you're just gonna have to get on with it, because therapy just puts you in the same situation over and over again instead of you just moving forward. And so like at that point I realized that talking to my mother about it is probably not going to happen, and that I just need to go see a therapist and talk about it and try to work through that way instead.
Now, I'll say I'm on the fence about the therapist thing. I think in some situations they can be good. I think that you have to be very careful, though, because if you find a good therapist, then you're great. But as I was saying earlier, just being in what they call quote unquote the movement, I've just seen the behind the scenes of it, and some of these people are very sick and very unqualified to help other people. There was a group here that I really wanted to get involved with because they were doing some alternative therapies, Afrocentric, and things where you get out and garden, and just all different kinds of unconventional therapies. And I said, I'd really like to learn, because I was also working on a book for survivors of sexual assault. And I said, this, could really give me some good ideas. So I talked to this woman, and I look at her, she almost reminds me of like a middle-aged India Arie, tall, beautiful, dark-skinned, natural hair woman. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. This is exactly the kind of program I want to get into. Well, I talked to her for a couple minutes, and next thing I know, she's pushing the homo agenda. She's telling me about her support groups, and she lets me know that there are trannies in her support group. And I'm like, what the hell are you having a woman's support group? I'm not sitting in a woman's support group with a transvestite. I'm sorry. And for you to sit there and say that that's okay shows me that you're just as sick as they are, so you're not the one to help people heal. So I kind of had to step back from that. But then there's some really good therapists. I actually talked to somebody in Detroit in another organization, and that organization, I have problems with some of the people that work there too, some of the Europeans. But the sister there was really cool. So there was good therapists too. Now, she basically told me, because I told her I wanted to go through the process to be able to write a book and give good advice, and I couldn't do that if I'd never attempted therapy. And after, I don't know, probably 8 sessions, she's like, look, do you really want to do this? Because I don't think that you need it at this point. I think that you worked out things on your own. But I could tell that she'd be a very good one. So I would tell people, if you're interested in therapy, definitely go, but do your research. Find somebody that you're comfortable with. Make sure that they are heterosexual. Make sure that they don't have their own issues with hating black men, like some kind of black widow. Just be very careful about who you are opening yourself up to. Don't go for just anybody, because some of these people are good and some of them are toxic as hell and will make it worse. But if you need therapy, I would definitely go and get it, because if nothing else, it can help you look at yourself and maybe your inner voice and help you come to a resolution on some of those things. But there are a lot of snakes in the grass, so I just say be careful. But I'm very glad to hear it sounds like you found a therapist that's really good and has really worked in your interest, so that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else, brother? Okay, I think maybe we lost him. He was coming in and out. Oh, is he still there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, but but I think I've said enough.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for calling in.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right. Again, the call-in number is 760-569-7676, participation code 948656#. And I do apologize for the technical difficulty. It looks like we may have a few people dropping off from time to time, but feel free to call back in. Definitely willing to accept your call. And yes, I just got a message saying, many therapists are not African-centered, and many turn rape survivors to lesbianism. That's what's happening in Atlanta. And I'd like to say that's what's happening here, too. I actually, it was after I had stopped doing my radio program last year, I had gone to a training to be a rape survivor's advocate when I wanted to do it in that form, which later on I changed my mind. But I went to their training, and it was for 2 weeks, and I was just becoming more and more enraged by what I heard, because one woman from one of the groups, the same group that I met the sister therapist in, the cool one, but she was European. She was teaching one of the courses, and she just came up, and the first thing she said is, the most dangerous thing a woman can do is date a man. And I was like, whoa, really? You really sat here and said that? And a lot of people, because this group was mostly survivors, most people who are interested in rape issues are survivors. So you had these people here, and they're clapping, and they're not seeing this homo agenda, which I saw from the beginning, but that there's a deep hatred for men within the movement that a lot of people have, because it's made up of people who have been victimized at some point. And so you have to be very, very aware of that. I remember one class, I was so irate. I actually, after the class was over, I ran out and I called Jeannie. I'm like, you would not believe what these people are saying. I was so angry because I could see these are the first responders. This class was for people who are the first people to come in contact with a rape survivor after they've been raped. And the things that were coming out of their mouth was so vile. It was very easy to see how this could be turned into kind of trying to get people to hate men. Not that you already wouldn't have some negative feelings towards men, but really breeding that into a feminist, lesbian, kind of thing. It was very, very disturbing. And then when we finally got to the section on male rape, it was very quick, and it was basically focused on homosexual men. So nothing really having to do with with the straight men and children who get raped and what they have to go through. It was very, very biased. And so we could just keep that in mind when you're looking for people. You really, really have to choose wisely. But again, it sounds like you got a really good one, so that's excellent. I know that you said that you wanted to talk about basically how this can turn women into having a feminist mindset. I'm not sure if you were saying maybe pushing them towards lesbianism too, but I know for sure the feminist aspect. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so I mentioned like a little bit ago about like this whole street harassment thing that's been going. That's this topic that's been coming up, and I don't think that there needs to be, because there's already laws in place that make that illegal and stuff. But I've just noticed that there's been a lot of men who seem to have kind of just co-opted what's happened, and they're trying to turn it into this thing where it's just like, oh, it's just ugly women that are complaining that, you know, no one's coming up to them and paying them compliments, so they're just going to pretend that I'm harassing them or something. And it's like, and it's like, no, that's really not what it is. It's kind of, you know, especially if something's happened to you, then being approached, especially like in a dark setting or a private setting or something, is really it causes like a lot of anxiety. And like I will tell people that on it, like from time to time, and say you should really be mindful of who you're approaching. And then I will just immediately get called names like, oh, you're being a feminist, you're saying all men are evil, and you're being like a man hater or something like this. Like, I'm really not. I'm just trying to tell, like, I never tell them I'm saying this from personal experience, but I do tell them like you should be mindful of it. And then there's like other situations, like whenever you get cases about like rape that's happening in the media, like especially with black females or something, and things just kind of get glossed over. And then, like, you know, like black women will try to talk about it, and then the men kind of just kind of gloss over it. And then it kind of really does create a sense of resentment towards them. And I can kind of see why they would kind of just jump into, you know, feminism.
You know what? And what you're saying is true. It immediately brings to mind Sister Jada, the young girl who, I guess they spiked her drink and raped her, put her in all kinds of positions, took pictures, and it became a Twitter trend to mock this little girl as if it was cute. And I remember it said that the dude who did it actually was angry at her for quote unquote snitching, as if she should have his back in him raping her and putting naked pictures of her online. That blew my mind, and it was just almost beyond my comprehension until hearing you today say that the guy asked you how you felt about being raped. I mean, it's like it's hard to believe that there are males out there that are really that horrible, but obviously there is, and things like that. It can drive somebody in that direction. I know there was for the brother who got killed. I think it was in New York by the police, and there was women saying, "Well, I don't care about him. I'm worried about black women. Black men don't care about us. Why should we care about them?" And a lot of people thought that was just the most horrible thing in the world. And I certainly don't agree with it. I certainly think those women need help, and they definitely need a new perspective. But thinking about what these women may have gone through and the fact that generally nobody cares about women's issues can really, really push you in that direction. I agree completely. Did you hear the whole thing with Queen Noble when he came out saying rape is a revolutionary act, or did you miss that?
Yes, my time. I found out about it on Facebook, and my timeline kind of just blew up.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I had heard about who he was before, and I never really paid him any mind because I kind of just thought he was an idiot. But when I heard that he had said that, I was just like really angry because I had actually read an article, I think it was last year, that said it was a statistic that said I forgot the exact statistic, but it said it's a very large percentage of black females who have been like molested or raped before they turn 18. And so for him to say that raping black women is revolutionary and being kind of just, casual about the whole thing, it was really, I don't know, just really upsetting.
Definitely. And what got me about it, because I actually did a video on it because we had did a program on it, and I did kind of an update where I was just saying what was going on, and at the end I stressed that women need to learn martial arts. They need to learn how to protect themselves. They need to start going to the gun range. And I didn't say anything about, using this specifically against black men, because I don't care who attacks you. You need to be able to defend yourself. We've been victimized enough, and we need to be able to do that. But what surprised me is the amount of responses, instead of saying, yes, he was wrong for saying rape a woman, the responses were, oh, so you're telling women to attack black men. Oh, I bet you won't do that to a white man. I'm sitting there like, are you serious? You are missing the entire point here. Women are getting raped, and the men in our community are doing nothing about it. Now men are getting raped too, but we are being victimized on a daily basis, and our so-called protectors are doing nothing about it. Instead, they tend to enable people to continue the behavior or even defend the behavior, and it was just disgusting to me. So that was pretty much my feelings on that. I couldn't believe that a black man could say that rape is a revolutionary act, but a black woman could not say defend yourself.
Right.
Have you taken any steps to do anything like that, learn how to use weapons or anything like that to be able to protect yourself in the future, or do you feel comfortable that you're not going to end up in a situation like that again?
Well, I have taken martial arts in the past. I do want to take it again in the future, because especially after listening to one of your programs about learning self-defense, because every now and then I'll get just the flashbacks kind of flare up, and then I kind of just realize, okay, if I'm in a situation like that again, something similar to that, or even just maybe just being out on the street and I just need to protect myself, can I actually do it? And then I just think at this present moment, I might not actually be able to do it. So I definitely do want to learn. I definitely do want to be able to learn how to, at the very least, defend myself. Yeah.
I would definitely do that. Just because it's good to know. Like I said, you don't know who you'll use it against. It could be anybody. But we always have to be ready. There was and I'm going to close. We're almost at the 9 o'clock, or we are at the 9 o'clock hour. But there was a sister in Detroit who went to a store to cash her check. There's a lot of that in Detroit, mostly check cashing places. And of course, they're run by Arabs who do not respect us. And she was pregnant. She was married. She was pregnant. He said, well, this is a large amount. You have to come back to cash this check. And she thought that was very odd. But she went back anyway, didn't listen to her gut, which is another mistake a lot of us make. We don't listen to our instincts. And he pulled out his penis and basically ejaculated on her dress. And it could have been worse than that. Anything could have happened. Hopefully, I don't know if it's because she was pregnant that he didn't go further or what. But these are the kind of things that are happening. And these aren't just isolated events. These are happening frequently to a lot of women, and we must begin to take care of ourselves when it comes to that, because it could have been much worse. That was bad enough. It could have been worse. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave everybody with?
I guess to all of the callers who did call in and wish me that I was basically I would say I'm about 95% there. I still have recurring flashbacks and stuff, but it doesn't affect me as much as it did. And I'm actually in a really stable, loving relationship right now, which really has helped me a lot in trying to get through, not only just get through those situations, but get through a lot of issues that I've had with men. And I guess the last thing I'll say is because I know there's a lot of women and men who are going through this. Just it really isn't your fault, and just you have to you just have to you really need to get help and stay strong, because it really is a bad, nasty cycle if you don't get some type of help of some sort.
Okay. Well, I definitely thank you for being so open and sharing your story. I know that it's not easy, and I'm glad that you were able to open up and really let people in and see a story that we don't always see. I'm very, very sorry that it happened to you, but I think that people are going to be able to take that and gain something from that story, because like I said, most people have one image in their head of rape, and it's so unrealistic from what it actually looks like. So I think that you have helped a lot of people today, and I definitely appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, this was another one of those programs that are very, very serious, sometimes hard to listen to, but I hope that we all learned and benefited from it. Anybody who wants to know more, if you go to Angela Freeman on YouTube, like I said, I have 3 programs on child molestation. I have quite a few on everything from the predator prey